Multiplayer is such a common feature in racing games these days that I don't think we reflect much upon it. It's expected. This is unlike the game F-Zero, where single player was the only option available. The developers behind the game, Nintendo EAD, wanted to make a new racing game with this feature, and they soon got to work. To lean towards a wider audience, they used go-karts, and when deciding who the racers would be, they tried adding Mario characters. They were happy with the idea, and eventually Mario Kart was born, cultivating in the 1992 release of Super Mario Kart for the SNES. Today, it may not be as revered as future entries, but that doesn't mean it's not worth playing. Or is it? Super Mario Kart is a game that throws multiple challenges at the player, some more annoying than others. But once they're overcome, can the game reveal itself to still be a fun experience that should be tried at least once by fans of the series? Let's find out. Starting off with the controls, newer players of the series will immediately notice that the karts in Super have a looser grip. I wouldn't say you're going to accidentally fling yourself off the track, but it's loose enough where you can quickly turn to avoid obstacles with no issue. However, problems arise in tracks that have sharp turns, as making them in succession can sometimes lead to skidding, although that's more of a track issue, which I will get to later. While skidding, you will slide into one direction, making it harder to change trajectory. This will most likely lead to players hitting a wall or getting off course. I know this happened to me when I first started, but I was able to avoid such a fate more often through practice and by timing when to stop accelerating. In addition, you have the power slide to help you out as well. You could call it a drift, but it behaves so differently compared to how it acts in later entries, so I'll just stick to the former name. Just like turning, power sliding has a learning curve. Players may believe that they only need to hold the direction they want to go in plus one of the bumpers. But that is ill-advised, as you will take too wide of a slide and mess up the turn. What you want to do is, as soon as you are lined up with the direction you want to go in, press the opposite direction. For example, if you were sliding right, press left when you are ready to stop. The only small nitpick I have with the controls is the lack of a reverse button. It doesn't matter much overall, but there are those small moments where you wish you had it. It wasn't even an oversight by the developers. The manual explicitly makes it clear that there is no reverse button. It says you can bunny hop to turn, but that's a bit of a pace killer. I think the rear view mirror button could have been replaced by this feature. But controls are only part of the wider gameplay. I think this is where Super has gained a bit of notoriety, specifically with AI behavior. The AI are given a multitude of advantages, with the main star of the show being the ability to summon an item whenever they want, some of which are unique to them. It's pretty clear why this would be unfair. I won't waste your time listing all of those items, but I have to say the worst one comes from Mario and Luigi with their star. In Super, each character is given a predetermined set of rivals, and since my favorite racer is the Koopa, that means my rival is Luigi. There have been several instances where he won't stop tailgating me, and then he activates a star, leading him to bump into me and cause me to spin out. I've tried letting him pass, but no, he just has to target me. At least with the other items, you can still defend yourself. With the star, you just have to hope it runs out before you get attacked. This system could be improved in one of three ways. The first way would be to get rid of the AI-only items entirely, and I think this option would be pretty boring. Removing the items would eliminate a unique part of Super's identity. The second option would be to create a cooldown for item usage. This would help mitigate the constant spamming of items from AI. They'll drop one item and then immediately drop another. By adding cooldown, you'll balance out their ability to summon an item. The third, and my favorite option, would be to allow the player to use these unique items. Imagine when selecting a racer, you had to consider what exclusive item you got. Do you select Mario for an increased chance at a star, or would you use Toad for the opportunity to use the poison mushroom? This idea would be later explored with Double Dash, but it would have been neat if it was present in Super. Moving on to my next topic of contention, the AI drive near perfectly. It could be the sharpest turn or the smallest space, but that does not matter. It makes sense for your main rival to do so, but everyone else following that model is something I'm mixed on. They shouldn't drive horribly, but there are some spots where they should have some trouble, like with the vanilla-like ice blocks. Bumping also is a mechanic in favor of the AI. No matter what, if an AI bumps into you, you are the one to suffer the consequences. At most, you can maybe dink them in a direction, but they lose minimal speed while you are left behind, reflecting where it all went wrong. The best course of action would have been for the game to not slow you down too much if you get hit by the side or the back. That way, you aren't punished for something you have little control over. You may have also noticed the coin counter in the bottom right hand corner. Keep that above 0 because if you have none and get hit, you'll spin out. That's one more point for AI since they don't have to deal with that. Narrow tracks suffer the most since everyone is most likely to be bunched together. Fortunately, you start the race with some coins and they are abundant on the track, so this isn't much of an issue. I actually mostly like how coins are implemented since the more coins you get, the faster you go, with your max speed being reached at 10. It provides a nice incentive to collect them beyond just trying to protect yourself. Furthermore, any extra coins you collect get added to your total, allowing for some bumping wiggle room so you can lose some while still maintaining top speed. But Mario Kart doesn't have just coins. There are items as well, ones the player can actually use. This game established iconic ones like mushrooms and shells, but I want to focus on the former and the feather. The mushroom is surprisingly tricky to get a hold of in Super. When activated, it shoots you forward immediately, and the acceleration can be a bit much because when used on tracks that don't contain straightaways, they can be detrimental by causing you to go off course. I think it could have been improved by making the speed boost a bit more gradual. With the current mushroom, it's like going from 0 to 100 instantly. By making the boost more gradual, starting at 0, then moving to 50, and then finally shifting to 100, players would have been given a lot more control, making them less uncertain about when they should use this item since I always found myself asking that question since I wanted to make the most out of the mushroom every time. For the feather, I think it is an underutilized item because its concept opens the door for many possibilities from small shortcuts. There could be a sharp turn you have to make, but with the feather, you can circumvent it entirely and shave off seconds from your run. Considering how challenging 150cc can get with later tracks, it's a wonderful tool to have in your arsenal. Those small skips really do make you feel like some sort of Super Mario Kart strategist. The game even encourages you to get into this mentality by providing shortcuts that could only be used with the feather. By using them, you begin to wonder, where else could I use this feather? And then you go experimenting from there. I don't think it will ever return to a future modern Mario Kart in the racing mode considering how complex the tracks can get, but they are wonderful to have in Super. I wish I could have similar positive feelings about the map. It's harmless, but it's all I can really say about it. The average player probably won't utilize it much, and that's not saying much for something that takes up half the screen. It can give you a general idea of the layout for the track you are about to play, but this can be obscured by the large character sprites. A better way to show where the players are on the map would have been to use the icons used when the players cross the finish line since they are smaller, but still let you know who's who, although I would have preferred a small map in general, allowing the gameplay to take up a majority of the play area. Of course, the game was probably designed this way in order to accommodate for the second player, and the developers decided just to add a map for those playing alone. Like I said, not a bad feature, I just think it's a bit of a visual mess and could have been cleaned up a bit. In contrast, I really like the added challenge of having to score 4th place or higher. It adds a good amount of intensity once you start to fall behind. Failing to place high enough also isn't overly punishing as you are given 3 lives but can earn more. This gives you the opportunity to restart a race if you want to score first, but know you won't be able to make it to the front of the pack in time. This was useful for ensuring a gold cup, and with that, we have to analyze the tracks this gameplay takes place on, and the results are certainly mixed. Theming-wise, the tracks are inspired by the themes present within Super Mario World. Unfortunately, they can get a bit repetitive. It might have been constraints due to time or hardware, but it becomes a challenge to ignore when all the tracks are flat. Why does Mario Circuit have 4 tracks when themes like Koopa Beach have like 2? I think a better distribution of track themes would have benefited the game. Also, Donut Plains feels too similar to Mario Circuit. Not by looks, but they both give off the beginner track vibe. Since we are taking inspiration from Super Mario World, instead of Donut Plains, Vanilla Dome could have been implemented since it would have had the unique property of being underground, unlike the property of Overworld that is shared between Donut Plains and Mario Circuit. As for the design of the tracks themselves, I'll group them all together based on their theme, since there are not a lot of differences between the tracks, but I'll address anything that sticks out. Starting with the Mario Circuit tracks, I don't have much to say. They're meant to be the easier courses for players to get into, and they fulfill that role well. But I am confused as to why there's a circuit in the Star Cup. If the player already reached that cup, they're probably already proficient at the game, so what's the purpose of including this basic course? They should have definitely stopped appearing after the Flower Cup because they can easily become boring. Next up is Donut Plains, which contain sharper turns and narrow paths, so you need to exercise further caution. This is where power sliding is shown to be crucial because if you don't do it well, you will crash into the grass. This is especially apparent in Donut Plains 3, where, after hopping over a bridge, you have to make a quick turn into the path that just feels slightly larger than your character. It's also the first theme to introduce water, which I will speak more about with Koopa Beach. I think the paths could have been made a little wider because there are some turns where, no matter what, I always just barely end up avoiding the grass. Mostly with Donut Plains 3, for the reason I mentioned, making it one of my least favorite tracks, as that wasn't even taking account all the other racers bumping you around. That makes getting first a pain on this track. At least the Monty moles are cute. Ghost Valley brings two concepts to the table, pits and feather shortcuts. Pits are probably one of the biggest things you have to avoid in this game, since falling off means you have to wait for Lakitu to pick you up and then drop you. He also takes some coins, possibly killing your top speed. If you're skilled enough, you could get an immediate speed boost once dropped by timing when to accelerate, but this can mean a death sentence for certain tracks, as you will bump into a wall or fall into the pit once again. Failing the timing could also lead to you burning out, so there is a risk factor. As for the feather, Ghost Valley 1 reveals what you can do with it. Near the end of the lap, you normally have to go around this section, but if you have a feather and align yourself just right, you can land on the shortcut and skip that section entirely. An excellent showcase for the possibilities this item has to offer, and I wish the game had more opportunities like this one, because it's not just reliant on the chance of you having the feather. If you don't align yourself correctly, you'll fall into the pit below, or land on the platform and then fall. It creates a skill threshold that is necessary to pass if you want to achieve the shortest time. This desire to cut down your times is encouraged further by Ghost Valley 3 that has a speed booster behind a bounce pad, allowing you to fly far and high. If you angle it right, you could shave off 2 seconds, which doesn't sound like a lot, but can make a difference in 150cc. Solid set of 3 tracks. Sadly, Bowser Castle is where the tracks start to falter. Bowser Castle 1 is a decent track for the Mushroom Cup, but 2 and 3 have issues. For 2, it has a feather shortcut, which is nice, but it fails to communicate that to the player. On first playthroughs, you'll see a turn to the left and think, oh, a shortcut. What most players will likely do is accelerate in that direction, realize they needed a feather, but they are unable to react quickly to stop, causing them to fall into the lava. I think there should be a way for players to escape this situation. For example, a trail near the end of the shortcut directing them back onto the main path would have proved useful. Even if players managed to stop in time, they would have to bunny hop around, go back the way they came, and then continue forward. It's too much time wasted on a singular mistake, so you're better just throwing yourself into the lava. My next gripe with this course is the 2 diverging paths up ahead after this feather shortcut. They both have a rectangular shape, and the problem is that they are pointless. For the first one, you are covering the same amount of distance no matter what route you take, and the second one has a route that is not only longer to travel through, but is also off the beaten path, so why take it? This track is attempting to give the illusion of options, but it fails immediately. It would have been better to cut those options out to make the track more concise. While not as bad, I'm not the biggest fan of how Bowser Castle 3 handles things either. At the start, there is a sharp turn that's already bad enough because you're near guaranteed to bump into someone, ruining your slide. But also, the path is quickly made narrow, so you have to be in the middle, otherwise you'll end up hitting a wall. It's a tricky maneuver, so I don't think this suits the loose power sliding well. There's also the section with 3 paths surrounded by walls that feels kind of pointless, since it's pretty easy to avoid hitting the walls in the first place, and no path is better than the other. I wish they could have liked these tracks because they do have enjoyable aspects. They're just bogged down by some strange design decisions. I would say I'm glad that we can move on to Choco Island, but unfortunately, I'm split on that one as well. Choco Island is boring because it's just a circle with some mud. It's probably chocolate, but let's be honest, it looks like mud. I would give the track a pass if it was in the Mushroom Cup, but this is the Flower Cup. The difficulty should have been bumped up a little. They tried to do that with Choco Island too, but honed in on the wrong element, the mud. The mud slows you down and serves as an obstacle you need to avoid. For some reason, Choco Island 2 decided to cover up like a quarter of the track with mud, and you need to cross over it. I would understand if it was distributed evenly over the track, but why condense it into one spot? Everyone will have to cross it no matter what, so all it does is to serve to slow down the race for the sake of it. There are also bumps afterwards that serve no purpose since they just launch you up, but have little effect afterwards. You could get rid of them, and the skill level that is required for this track would be the same. The track design gets even worse with Vanilla Lake, arguably one of the worst track sets in the game, and I place the blame on the ice blocks. The ice blocks are placed on the main path and are so difficult to avoid due to being in close proximity of each other. Hitting one makes you halt instantly. The problem is made even worse by the ice physics, which is why the blocks are such a challenge to avoid in the first place. Remove the ice blocks and all you are left with is two boring circles that don't deserve to be in the Star Cup or the Special Cup. Luckily, I don't have many grievances with Koopa Beach. However, it's pretty uninteresting though. Both Koopa Beaches are just circles with water, and the water is just like mud, or at least the shallow kind. I think the deep water in Super slows you down considerably too much for my liking. It's a crawl once you fall inside, so try to get out immediately. Lakitu will pick you up if you're in there too long, but it takes some time relatively speaking before he does so. Improving the water speed slightly would have helped the pacing because the player would still be punished if they do fall in, but not to the point where they fall behind quickly. I also think Koopa Beach 1 would have been more suited for the Flower Cup and Koopa Beach 2 for the Star Cup. Now that I have covered a majority of the themes, there's just one left, and you all know how iconic it is. Rainbow Road. What a way to go out, and an excellent final challenge for the player. The saturated color scheme feels so distinct, and turns are just the right amount of difficult. It also has the unique obstacle with the glowing thwomps. They're just like regular thwomps from Bowser Castle, but touching them causes you to spin out as well. I actually noticed a pattern with the enemies being used on the track. First, you have only the Monty Moles that slow you down. Afterwards, there are the thwomps that only hurt you if they land on you, but also sometimes serve to block the track. The glowing thwomps go further with the challenge and make hitting them take even more of your time away. That progression of challenge is something I can appreciate. Returning to the track itself, Rainbow Road is a nice send-off for the game, because who could forget its music? I want to start this segment by saying that Super Mario Kart's soundtrack is just pleasant, with Rainbow Road being my favorite. Rainbow Road's music pushes such a grand sense of triumph. There is this feeling of finality present as you have worked your way through the other courses, with Rainbow Road being your reward. Just like the track, I think this music became iconic because of how different it is compared to the others, making it feel special. Bowser Castle's music really amps the intensity and truly hits home the fact that you are driving near lava and have to be careful. The atmosphere is oppressive, making you curious about what lies ahead. A similar atmosphere is brought by Ghost Valley, but I think that song was uninteresting. It just sounds long and droning to me. But you could argue it fits the track since the Ghost House theme sounds similar. Now on the complete opposite of the spectrum, the theme of the game itself. It's such a lovable song and prepares you for the fun you're about to have. There's a nice build-up in the beginning and then boom! The song is filled with whimsy. I would also like to point out that every character has their own jingle after completing a race, and they're all solid since they reflect their respective characters well. For example, Mario's theme is pretty standard, while Bowser's theme is more imposing in comparison. It's great that they added these details instead of just sticking with a singular race complete song. As for all the other tracks, they didn't leave a particularly large impact on me, but I still think fondly of them, although Mario Circuit's theme gets repetitive at times. To wrap this all up, would I still recommend Super Mario Kart? If you're willing to put up with all the advantages the AI have over you, and are willing to put in the time to learn how to manage the controls to your advantage, you'll have a good time. Even with some of the courses not holding up well, there's enough here to be worthwhile through the engaging gameplay and charming music. When I first tried the game, I thought it was too difficult to get a hold of and dropped it. Eventually, I came back and grew some respect for it. It's great when I'm able to step back from a game, come back, and then realize what I've been missing out on. And with that, this is the end of my random review of Super Mario Kart. Also, there's like a battle mode, but I didn't have anyone to play with, so yeah. I mean, like if you have the opportunity, you can tell me, so yeah. Bye.